call our Finance Committee to order. I'm going to just bring up my agenda here real quick. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, though. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we this evening, I think I sent the agenda, and we really have the guests from the SAU this evening. So we're going to just hit that right off the top. Just as a heads up, we're not going to do meeting minutes because Leah's not here. So we will just table it at the end when we get to that point. We can still talk about new business, old business. We'll go through all that. Sure. Now the question really is, do you want to take notes? Or you want to just have Leah do it for recording? Because I know you did it before. I'm indifferent.
I can just take minutes and I can put some.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can go too crazy.
Just to keep it kosher.
Yeah. And so, Jackie, I apologize. I know Megan had talked to you. Do you guys want to talk? Did you talk about the order at all or have any preference?
No, we hadn't talked about that. I just said, did they have something that they could present to us? And I figured Jackie would decide how she wanted to go about it. That's how we've done it in the past.
So we're open. Our hopes were, and last year was so much different because, of COVID, opportunities to hear, even where you're at with a draft, maybe ask some questions about how things are done. And so we're willing to let you drive in whatever you think is the best route to get down.
Okay, great.
Did everybody get one of these?
And we do have some extras for the folks who aren't here.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, we are at a different point in the process than we usually come later. And I mean, this is great because we can have some back and forth, but I do want the caveat to be, we have a WARE board meeting next week and we're going to continue to do some work. We haven't brought the default calculation to them and we decided it was okay that so you're going to hear the default today. We talked about it in general terms, but we hadn't had that finalized. So you heard it first here. I think I'd like to start with the WARE budget and go through that. And I think Zach Lawson is coming, and so we'll do the John Stark budget after. I'd like to start with the overview. We put that together today. It kind of tells the story of the budget and where we're at this point, and then we can dig in. You have the object summary, you have the line-by-line budget. Lots to dig into, but starting with the overview. So we are currently operating under a $16,666,000 budget. The default that the calculation we came to is $17,233,507. So that is a $566,000 increase, or 3.4%. The proposed budget, this is where we're at this moment, is a $17,391,924,000. $100 budget, and then that's a $725,000 increase, or 4.35%. The next grouping are the things that impact the budget. There's $193,000 of a tax-neutral food service increase, and we talked about that tax-neutral piece last year. We are predicting that there are going to be increased revenues with the food service. We are able to, because of COVID relief, lunch is actually free for all students. That in order to increase revenue, we have to increase the appropriation to have that balance. So that's an in and an out, but that's $193,000. And so that's 1.2% of the increase. We're grappling with a horrifying 17.9% healthcare increase, and the GMR is our guaranteed maximum rate. It can't go up more than 17.9%. But that's a huge number. It could come in lower, but we have to budget for the 17.9%. So that represents the biggest increase to the budget. That is in the default calculation, and that's in our proposed budget, and that's $269,000, or 1.6% of the increase.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, it sounds like you have no choice to pay that. So what happens in a scenario where the budget doesn't get voted in?
It's in the default
Oh,
calculation.
it is the default. I'm sorry. I thought
Yeah.
you.
Yes. So
So it's
because
in the. Okay.
it,
You
but
answered my
I mean, we still have more than a $500,000 increase in the default, and half of that is the healthcare. So I'm trying to give you a sense of why that number went up as much as
Because
it
in
did.
the gray, these are all things that are, that are included in this default increase, correct?
Correct.
My bad. That makes sense.
Correct. And then we have, smaller increases within special education, student services, the transportation contract, and the district shares for the SAU. And so the bulk of it of the default is represented in, and actually, I think if you add that up, it equals about $560,000. Below, I tease out the difference between the default and our proposed number.
I have a quick question
Yeah.
before we move on. Has the district seen a decrease in income because of the free lunches being for everybody, and so people aren't applying through low-income needs?
It's a little more nuanced than that. Yes, except for the legislature fixed.
Oh, they did?
Well, they fixed it for this year.
Oh, they
We're
used
into-
last year's figures?
Right.
Yeah, okay, I remember that now.
And so that made it okay. There's actually an increase in revenue with the food service program. And so we have more students getting lunch and
Okay.
breakfast.
I think to that point where a lot of.
I'm sorry. Could I have you come to the microphone just so the public can hear what you have to say? I would love to have them hear you.
And this is Chris Roy.
Hi, Chris. You remember Chris? Thank you for coming in.
What was I answering? Oh yes. So the interesting thing is that they're fixing it as they go for the different federal grants and adequacy numbers that rely on free and reduced lunch numbers, and if for whatever reason they continue the program that they had this past year and this year, they're going to have to find a new way to get that data. But right now they're fixing those numbers as they go. So last year the legislative body did adequacy based on the previous year. This year I believe it was I believe it was the governor that made the call to do that again, to go on pre-pandemic numbers. And so right now that program goes through this year. And so they'll have to continue to find ways to get that data for federal grants and adequacy moving forward. But the food service increase that you see is simply, if that program continues, we will need additional expenses to keep up with the revenue that's coming in. If that program does not continue, the contractor that we utilize for food service will continue to run the lower program that they did pre-pandemic.
Because you'll have less kids most likely getting lunch
Yeah,
because they'd have to pay.
it'll correct back to, paid, more children will bring their lunch from home, things of that nature. So this just gives them the ability to expend more if their revenues are higher, but we run the program in a profitable status. That's the goal.
And we anticipate that that's going to continue, the free lunch is going to continue. Every indication is that it is. Other questions about that part? Okay. So then we broke it down by object. The first column is the default and the increase between this year and next year, and then the proposed. And so the difference between these numbers is what I'd like to talk about. So the $37,000 difference is primarily the wage pool. So our custodians, our secretaries, our administrators are not part of a collective bargaining agreement. And so to be able to give them a raise, that we have to do it through a wage pool. And as you know, as you may know, we are having, we want to keep our custodians. We've had trouble hiring custodians, secretaries, and we're facing the same staffing shortages that everyone is. The benefits category, that is the healthcare. There was also a smaller dental increase. Purchase services. Purchase services are the SAU is within purchase services. We have instructional coaches who work with our teachers, and they're within that line. It's the folks that are shared between the districts within that line. John's within that line? Yes, and so facilities manager is within that line also. So that's increases to those costs. We contract, so at Centerwoods, we contract with Henniker for the facilities director. And so that's it's a 1 day a week, or the equivalent facilities director, and we contract that back from Henniker. I'm sorry, John Stark. And we contract the Ware Middle School facilities director with Henniker. And so they're going to get an increase in pay, their healthcare needs of all those folks, that is what that number represents. Property services, we had increases in disposal services, heating repairs, some computer repairs. We also shifted part of a custodian from contracted services to salaries. And so we're trying to solve this custodial issue, and we keep going back and forth between contracted services and we'd rather have an employee. It is about equal as far as the cost to the district, but we need folks. Going down under property, the difference there is in computer equipment. So the other layer to all of this is we've received a significant amount of COVID funding. And we're trying to figure out how best to manage those federal funds that are going to expire in 2024. And we want to manage them so they last through 2024. So this budget cycle we're talking about and the following budget cycle. We're not allowed to, we can't take something out of the budget and say, oh, we're not going to have a fourth grade teacher. We're going to take it out of the budget and we're going to pay for it with grants. We're supposed to use it for learning loss, things that have some connection to COVID. Computer equipment is something we've been able to do. So we've talked years about computers and our technology needs, and we were able to use some of the COVID funding to get the equipment students needed, and we're catching up, and we're going to be in a pretty good place. We have to figure out how to maintain it. And so what this represents, the proposed budget represents, is keeping some of that within the budget because we have to maintain it, but a significant part of it, and I think we shifted 75,000, 170,000 out of the budget, and we're going to use COVID funds for that. But right now we have about 20,000 in the budget for new equipment, technology equipment. That line has to be higher. In order for us to, we were able to use the COVID funding to get us where we need to be, or will be. How do we maintain it? And then I explained the shift, the increase in food service, and then Chris just made an accounting change between the 800 line and the 900 line.
Jackie, if I could just back
Yeah.
up for a second. The 170,000 you moved out of the budget. So what you're saying is you utilize 170,000 in this budget from COVID funding. 20,000 of that is for computers, and then the other 150,000 is for are the various items. Can you clarify?
The budget we brought to the board a month ago, there was an increase of $250,000? $217. Through our conversations, we were trying to find what the balance is. How do we make the most of that COVID funding, but still build up the budget line, because we now have all this equipment, and it's great that we have Chromebooks for all our students. But in 4 years, we're going to need to replace them. We also have some other infrastructure needs, some access points and those sorts of things that we need to maintain, and we need to have a plan for, a sustained plan for them.
Thank you.
Sure.
So basically, you're increasing this budget line by the 50,000 so that in 4 years, when we need new computers, you're not coming and asking us for a $200,000 increase.
And I don't think, we don't want it to be 200,000,
You know what I mean?
but
But I'm
yes,
just,
exactly.
it's just numbers, like
Yep.
basically,
Yep.
it's little by little getting us what we need.
We're working on a plan to sustain within a smaller number over years. So, like for Chromebooks, for instance, our technology director is working on replacing in grades 1 and grades 5. And so that is a projectable number over that time. So say we need 30,000 for Chromebook replacements a year in grade 1 and grade 5. And so things like that, where we're trying to get to a set number that we know we can work within to accomplish what we need to accomplish in technology.
Okay, so you're saying like in first grade, they would get a Chromebook, and then when they get to fifth grade, they would get a new Chromebook, because that Chromebook would be obsolete.
Right. 'Cause
And
they-
and you're trying to get to the number that you would need to be able to do that replenishment.
Correct. So we don't want to use federal grant funds and then be left like without the ability to replace the equipment. Because Google requires the end of life dates on those Chromebooks. They stop supporting them after 4 years. So we have to replace them after 4 years.
Self-destruct.
Well, they
Basically.
Bill,
Kinda like Apple.
They-
Like an Apple phone, iPhone.
You don't support it after.
right. And then we run into some, data security, privacy stuff, that govern that. So that is the WARE budget in a nutshell. Again, behind that, you have the much more detailed lines.
Jackie, what is your, level of confidence in this draft at this point? Do you think you're pretty close, or is there some big stuff that you think is gonna have to move?
The only thing that we're still grappling with is we have contracts coming. We've got a teacher's contract in Ware, a teacher's contract at John Stark, and a support staff contract in both of those districts. Those are our absolute top priorities, those 4 contracts. I mean, our budget is people. And one of the things we are talking about and considering is the elimination, the only place we can take from is people. So we're doing some analysis right now of if we can cut, and we're pretty sure we can cut 1 position, which would lower both the default and the proposed budget by $75,000. We're exploring whether we can get to 2. If we did that, again, some people look at the delta between the default and the proposed. This lowers it whether the default passes or the proposed passes.
So in terms of the possible cuts, is that something that's gonna be a sacrifice for school, or is that something that we can afford because of our enrollment still being down?
The enrollment, it's, there are a couple answers to that. There is enough funding within COVID money, that if there was a need that was related to COVID, and I think we could make the case, we're not supplanting, we're not taking a fourth grade teacher and replacing it through the grant with another fourth grade teacher. But there may be needs for another person to be an interventionist and to really come in and help target in on some of the learning loss we've experienced, or maybe some behavioral support, or there are some other needs that we could look to the grant for. I'm pretty confident about one of the cuts. We could do that and we would be okay. We are currently not fully staffed, and it's really hard. Everyone, we're feeling it. There are cracks, right? Because everyone's a little overwhelmed. And that being said, the ability to attract people, to keep people, that is a sacrifice I'd be willing to advocate for. I know there are no guarantees, but that I mean, if that's what we're weighing, I feel very confident about one position. We're doing some more work on the other one.
Same time, so you guys get
Go
the
ahead, Jeff.
Rochambeau.
No, it's not going to make a difference this year, but am I to understand that we're trying to stagger the duration of the contracts so we don't have 4 contracts up in a single year?
Yes, we are. That was a well-meaning way that came about because the teachers came in all three of the districts and said, "Hey, it's COVID. Let's just extend our contract." So that came about in a very well-meaning way. However, I mean, we
Here's the
just finished
fallout.
today, right before this meeting, the last of the 6, and I'm tired. But yes, that everything has to pass for that to happen. And but yes, we tried to do that.
Bill?
Yeah, Jackie, I know you can't identify what position you're looking at, because I understand it. And I've seen information from John Stark provided by your office on the numbers of students they had in, say, 10 years ago and what they're at today, and the staffing that was then and what it is now. What I don't have is the staffing, say, for Ware schools, say, 5 years ago when there were 2016, I had it as 1,027 student population, and today about 891. I think it's gone up about 15 this year.
Yep.
So with 150 student drop in population, what's the comparison of total staffing we had back in 2016? Teachers and paras,
Yep.
and teachers and paras. And if you don't have that, that's fine, but that's kind of what
Yep.
I'm looking for at
Yep.
some point.
That's
as
a good
comparison. I
question.
know with John Stark, that has come down
Right.
as student population has come down. And we all know that people are where the big costs are.
Right.
And I appreciate you trying to identify 1, maybe even 2 positions, but that's what I'd be looking at. Has there been a similar
Right.
reduction in staffing at the Ware schools like John Stark has done?
Right.
So,
Without having that, do you have it? Okay. I don't think it's been the same level.
because I also know that they're proposed in default budget. Some years they've come in with their proposed budget below their default
Right.
budgets. And with Ware schools, a lot of times it's still above.
I do, having worked pretty intimately with both budgets, there is very little to cut in the Ware budget. Besides, people, but there's, we've been able to carve out more at Stark. So,
Okay,
yeah.
just asking.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Is it because the kids are younger in Ware and that you need more people, like more more people per student? Is that why, like, Stark can get by with less staff, or?
So I don't want
I'm assuming,
to.
I'm trying to lead you, like, because that's always been in my mind, is that, like, where has a bigger, like, we can't cut as much staffing wise and things like that, because being in the school and stuff, I see the, like, the kids that need the paras and the kids that they need that more one-on-one support, and I even hear it from my kids that, like, maybe there should be more of it, and that there's not enough. That was more of where my question was going.
Our cost per pupil at John Stark is 17,000. Our cost per pupil in the Ware School District is 14 something. That's it.
Yeah.
It is, you can't do a high school as inexpensively as you can do a K through 8, but there is nothing in the Ware budget that is extra.
Can I add to that too?
Could you just state your name?
Yeah, sure. I'm Zach Lawson. I'm a Henniker resident, but I'm the chair of the John Stark School Board. Just adding to what Jackie had said too, I think all of our schools are small enough too that out-of-district special ed placements have a profound impact on the budget one way or the other, depending on where we have, how many students we have, measured in single digits. I think one of the fundamental differences that, and this may be sort of the point you were getting at, with the teachers at the high school versus the teachers in the K through 8 sort of realm, maybe to a lesser degree in the 7th and 8th grade sort of realm, we can control the offerings based on student interest at the high school differently than you can manage staff in a K through 8 sort of environment. You can't just cut a single unit of the 6th grade and save on that teaching staff, okay, right? But we can stagger our elective offerings at the high school and, as a result, reduce teaching staff. Now, I don't know how much of that has been going into effect year over year over year, but those are generally the scheduling dynamics that change between K through 8 and sort of the high school. I think we sort of all understood that, but I want to make sure
I
that was
appreciate that,
pretty
yeah.
clear. You know?
Thank you. And actually, part of what you're going to see with what we're proposing with the Stark budget is we rethought some of how we did things, and so we're not offering AP and honors language level 5. It's going to be an advanced class. There's opportunity cost to that, but there was only a handful of students, and we're going to put that together. So we rethought how we do that. We rethought our alternative program. So when we get to the Stark budget, that's what you're going to see. It is, to Zach's point, it's a little harder to rethink 4th grade.
Does anybody mind if I shut the window a little bit?
No,
Or I can, like, move over here closer to Jeff. It's, like, blowing on my back.
I cooled off.
Here, I'm just gonna go over here.
I don't think it was just me, though, just for the
Oh, I
record.
was like, oh my God, it's cold.
It's James, he gets a little hot.
So as far as what that warrant is going to look like, the Ware warrant, we've got the proposed, and there'll be the default calculation. There will be a kindergarten warrant, which I'm going to ask Natasha to speak about. And there'll also be both a teacher's contract and a support staff contract. Our support staff, neither of those are in a place yet. They're not tentatively agreed on. We are very close. So I can't share anything yet. But we had a starting pay in the para contract of $11.26. That's not good. And we have openings.
Shocker.
Imagine that. So, would you like me to talk about Stark, or do you have questions about Ware?
Well, do we want to talk about the kindergarten warrants, or
I'm
do
sorry.
we want to?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Jumping ahead.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
I have a handout for you. Hopefully that'll be helpful if you want.
We can pass this down.
So I'm happy that Liz is here tonight, so
Excuse me, I'm sorry, would you mind just stating your name for the public so they know who's
Absolutely.
talking and everybody else? Thank you.
I'm Natasha Coleman, I'm the assistant superintendent. I helped lead the kindergarten committee this past summer, and we had Neil Kirk, we had Liz, we had some parents from the community. we were charged by the board to come together and create a strategy for moving forward with full-day kindergarten. So a few things have changed since the last time we brought forth kindergarten that I want to highlight for you tonight, and then I can answer any questions you have specifically about the numbers in front of you. But a couple of big drivers are the declining enrollment that you've spoken to already in other contexts, and changing student populations at Center Woods Elementary School have freed up some physical space in the building. The other main driver is that full state adequacy is available in the first year of a full-day kindergarten program. Last time this was discussed, that was not guaranteed, and since then the legislature has acted on that. And then the other main driver is around the state now requiring midday transportation for kindergarten students, which is a significant cost. And so I'll just go over a couple of those numbers with you, and then I will happily answer any questions you have. Okay, so currently the midday bus run is this year costing $70,830. The current adequacy that we receive for a half-day program is $1,893 per child. Full state adequacy is $3,786. We anticipate, and we built our recommendation to the board on the idea that we would anticipate enrollment of around 100, or similar to what first grade enrollment is. It is our belief, and in talking to other communities, that most communities who run a full-day kindergarten program see very few new first grade enrollments. So the vast majority of students do start in kindergarten if there is a full-day offering. So we used first grade enrollment trends for the last 5 to 10 years. We factored in both. The 5-year average for first grade enrollment is 98. The 10-year average is 84. So like I said, we anticipate needing 5 classrooms of 20 students each, would bring up our revenue from $132,000 to $378,000. Actually, let me make sure I'm looking at the most recent document, because I have like 4 of them in here. Can you hand me the one I just handed out? Thank you. Yes, so from $132,510 in state adequacy to $378,600, which is an important point that I want to make sure I hone in on, is the idea that part of making the shift from a half-day program to a full-day program is that it shifts a significant amount of the burden of a kindergarten program from the local tax, what was the word we used? Local tax
Impact.
Yeah, impact to state, because we'd be getting that money in adequacy. The other thing it does is it moves from putting money towards transportation to the tune of $70,000 to actually educating children for the full day. So those are 2 important pieces to note in this proposal. The other thing to be aware of is that in the warrant process, we would be seeking the gross appropriation for the cost of this program, but there would be an increase in revenue. So the warrant would be around $233,000. However, as I mentioned before, you're going to see an increase in revenue of that $132,000 up to $378,000. So that increase in revenue more than exceeds the cost of the warrant article. Even in the first year, where we would have some one-time setup costs to outfit those 3 new classrooms. So the first year, we would spend that on the outfitting the classrooms, and then in the years after that, that would actually be an actualized net savings.
So I don't know about anybody else, but that's a lot. I'm sorry.
That
Go
was
ahead,
a lot.
Tom.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
Tom, I can't be the only one.
One of the, I think the chief sticking points the last time this came up was the space issue.
Yes.
So you're freeing up some space, but we're talking about 5 sections of full day. And I think you mentioned 2 possible spaces with combining classes because of decrease in enrollment. So where are you going to use, what are you going to use for the other space?
Yes, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up because I should have mentioned it earlier. One of the things that we reached out to the Department of Education about getting a waiver, because in the past we had been seeking out spaces that were 1,000 square foot, which is what the minimum standards calls for new construction. What we were told by the Department of Education is that we would be able to use current spaces that are 975 square feet, so just shy of 25 square feet, that have a bathroom. So we will not have to repurpose any art or, was it music maybe?
Music.
Yep, thank you. So art and music would be able to stay in their current space. We would essentially be using what are currently first grade classrooms. Those first grade classrooms would move into spaces that are currently being used by second grade classrooms. And some first grade classrooms won't have their own bathroom. They'll need to use bathrooms in the hallway because kindergarten classrooms have to have their own bathroom. So that's how we'll utilize the space. So some of the spaces are currently being used for specialized instruction. Some special education teachers might need to double up in a classroom, that kind of thing, to make space.
But it would still be contained within the Center Woods building?
Absolutely. There will be no use of the Ware Middle School facility in order to make this happen.
I have a question, and just because of all of the numbers, is it so did you start out by saying that there's no net increase in taxes because of the revenues? So there'll be, in other words, the warrant isn't so that we can collect more taxes, the warrant is so we can spend the money that we anticipate getting.
Yes, so we will appropriate that amount of, and I'm gonna always check to Chris to make sure my language is correct. We're gonna appropriate that amount of money so that we can get the increased revenue, which will essentially mean that over the course of, I have that number, after the first year, the net savings will be about $57,000. So it'll basically, another way of saying that is, it will cost us less money to run a full-day program than it does to run a half-day program. And the two main factors in that are that we will increase revenue and we will shift the expenses that are currently going to transportation into actually educating children.
So
I'm sorry, quick question. So this is all based on the estimate that you'll have 100 students in there.
Correct.
What is your actual break-even number of students before that makes any sense?
There is actually, no matter how many students we have, we actualize the savings. It's just a matter of how much savings. So bear with me 1 second, because I have that spreadsheet. I have too many pieces of paper at this point. Ta-da. So the point at which we only save about $570 is if we have 85 students and need to run 5 classrooms.
Yep.
Our, what we're proposing, which is the 100 students with 5 classrooms, as I said, is just over the 57,000 mark. The range is anywhere from about $500 in savings in the 85 students with 5 full teachers, with the maximum being, as Bill was looking at me, 85 students with 4 teachers would be the most savings at 87,000. But what I would say about that is, at that point, you may be trading off financial savings for academic outcomes. because that's above what the state recommends for a kindergarten classroom in terms of number of students. 21 5-year-olds is a lot in one room.
Saying 20.
What is
Two of them's a
the,
lot, but-
my question would be, with the increase of people moving to town, and we don't know what the dynamics are of those people who have moved to town, at what point would you need to get more classrooms, and would there be a possibility of having to move someone to the middle school? Like, what is the max number that you can fit in these classrooms?
So if Jess Potter were here, and we did talk about this at the, during the committee meetings over the summer, what she would probably say to you is that we're always dealing with changes in enrollment in any particular grade. We talk about the bubbles. We currently have a bubble, I think, in 5th grade, maybe.
Fifth grade, yeah.
Yeah. So if there were a year where we exceeded the 100 and we need to think about a 6th kindergarten classroom, it would probably mean that a higher level grade would increase that class size to bring a kindergarten teacher temporarily down into kindergarten to manage that bubble.
Okay, so the max for the 5 classrooms is this 100?
If we were to stick to the state recommendation and our local policy, yes.
Not saying this to be negative, but just so that we'll have the facts, so that if we want to defend this, we'll be able to. But that $37.86 per child doesn't come anywhere near the cost of educating the child when you compare it to the figures of other elementary school students. And even if you take the 70,000 and divide it by 100 and say, okay, there's another additional amount that we can, still you're talking about probably at least less than 50% of what the actual cost is per child if you compare it to the other elementary school costs. So I guess I need more clarification down the road here on how this is going to balance out, because it seems like it's still going to come out with needing something in the line of $5,000 or $6,000 extra per child out of that in order to balance your budget.
So one thing to consider is, so we already run a program that has roughly 70 kids in it. So to get to the 100 kids and have them be with us full day, right now we're already spending X amount of dollars per student for supplies and materials. So even though we're increasing the revenue substantially, we're increasing the number of classes, the differential in terms of the number of students is actually much smaller. It's not that we're doubling the number of students.
You're right.
Yeah, so that helps to kind of understand how these are the major factors, financial drivers in the shift. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's 30 more math books.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
wasn't counting the money that was already being spent.
Yeah,
That's what you're saying.
yeah.
Facilities cost plays into it, and we already have the facility.
Thank you.
Couldn't
So
hear what
he
you
said facilities costs plays into the per pupil expenditure, and we're already spending that, whether it's 4 half-day sections or 5 full-day sections.
Bill?
Yeah, currently you have used 2 classrooms. You have like 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions in the afternoon. It takes up to 75 students. So if you're going to have 5 potentially full-time, full day, you're going to have to hire, say, 3 additional teachers, 3 additional support staff.
Yep.
And that's included in still a savings if you look at the adequacy that the state still
Yes.
still provides.
Absolutely. So that's that whole first line in terms of the staffing estimates. And we factored in FICA, New Hampshire retirement, healthcare, worst case scenario. Well, no, actually not worst case scenario, middle of the road for healthcare. And so, yes, all of that is factored in.
And the full day adequacy from the state, that can be changed at any time down the line? It's determined, is that a set figure established by the state each year that they come up with a number and they tell you this is what we're going to provide?
It's very
can-
complicated,
And
so I
can,
will
well,
step aside.
can it go up or down?
Yes,
So
and it would go up and down for all of our students.
Adequacy gets set in the biennium budget for the state. And so when we provide our enrollment numbers to the state, they in turn give us, 3,000 some odd dollars per student enrolled, and then they give us smaller amounts for other factors of enrollment. So free and reduced, like I mentioned earlier, third grade reading, special education. So it's a layered calculation, and they give us that number. So don't quote me, but I believe that number per student traditionally raises as the bienniums go by, and they fund that through the education fund at the state.
Well, whether you half day or full day, you're still gonna get,
Yeah, so,
I mean, it's still gonna affect either program.
currently we're getting half of a student
yeah.
for the 70, 75 you said?
Yeah, so for the 70 students, we only get half of the adequacy.
Yeah, so it's like,
Right.
our numbers right now might be, our average daily membership might be like 70.5 or something like that, because we have half students in there.
Yeah.
I think it's more complicated than that because attendance and everything, but you understand, like, so it's we're just half students in that grade right now, and it would be full students moving forward. Any other clarification?
And I think it was just for Natasha. I think you had said earlier in your presentation, you were talking about the busing cost, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. That busing cost that we were forced to pay, was either last year or the year before, we now get to use that money elsewhere because that's coming out of a different bucket of money. So that goes towards Tom's concern.
Yeah.
It's factored
Exactly.
in here, so it essentially helps to offset paying for the new teachers. So instead of paying the bus company, we're paying teachers to educate children.
I like that.
So people boarding the same buses as the first graders.
But just,
Sorry, I think Liz was.
oh, I'm sorry, it's the Liz.
Let me ask, in terms of the annual savings, does that include the property services for feeding the children? That would be their full day also?
The food service is under the 900s,
Yes.
and, yes, they're factored, the appropriations there, yes, it is, that won't change the number.
Thank you.
So for the public, the answer was yes. Just because she's far away.
Sorry.
That's okay. Bill, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say, there are those, I mean, in the voting public who would also look at it and say, well, if you're saving 70,000 in transportation costs, that could be returned, as opposed to being used as an offset.
Well, what will happen is the increase in revenue will be used to lower the initial tax rate to begin with. So it's kind of, whether you move it that way or you take the increase in the revenue, that does get actualized.
The only way we get rid of that $70,000 cost is if we go to a full-day program. And so that 70,000 is in our default budget. If our proposed budget, if the warrant for kindergarten gets passed, at that point, that $70,000 shifts from the transportation budget to the kindergarten budget. But
Yeah,
it only happens if we
no,
have a.
I'm just saying, if you went to full-day kindergarten.
Right.
The actual cost of kindergarten is,
Yes.
the 70,000 is offset in the transportation budget, not necessarily in the staffing and the other costs of kindergarten.
But it is specifically a cost associated with our current kindergartners. It is a cost of doing kindergarten right now.
Okay, okay.
And if you actually followed that column of full-day kindergarten straight down, you would see what it looks like without the 70.
If so, if I'm hearing this correctly, Bill, it sounds like we couldn't return that money to the taxpayers if we wanted to. And I just, is
I
that,
get
is
where
that where we're at? I get what you're saying, and you guarantees that some
No,
of
I'm
the
just
taxpayers
saying,
would think that.
in future years, when you look at the budget by, I don't know if it's object or function, but it's object, you're gonna have, your salaries are gonna increase, right? Because your kindergarten costs are gonna be buried in various line
Yeah.
items. And you're gonna have a higher cost in your salaries, and you're gonna have a lower cost down here in transportation. And
Yeah, and
I'm
then,
just saying that the cost of kindergarten, I'm not I'm not
The third
sure.
thing you'll see is an increase in revenue. So if you looked at
Yeah.
all those three things, you'll see an increase in salary, a decrease in transportation, and an increase in revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know if this helps the understanding or not, but, so, the 230,000 warrant you quoted?
Yep.
So, that is a number based on so the warrant is the expenditures of it, so the 70,000 is being able to be net from that 230. So the cost of the program is 400.
Yeah, 432.
Well, that's with 5 teachers. The additional
yes.
the additional cost is about approximately 300,000. That gets net by the 70,000. So whether we get the default calculation approved or we get our proposed budget, we have 70,000 in the budget for that transportation. When the kindergarten passes, I don't need 70,000 in whatever my operating budget is. I no longer need $70,000 for that need, and so that need shifts from the 27 functions up to, like you said, the different staffing functions. And so that's an important note because our warrant's going to be 230, but warrants don't show revenue. And so any taxpayer that looks at the warrant is going to see 230 without, if they haven't viewed this viewed our school boards or anything, they're not going to see that we have that revenue on the other end.
So full-day kindergarten is approved on the warrant article. Is the transportation category in the proposed budget going to be decreased by
Correct.
$70,000?
Transportation will go down by 70,000.
Okay.
And that cost will shift up to wherever the additional kindergarten instructional costs would be. And so, to Natasha's point earlier, we're shifting from transportation to education.
Right. And then increasing the net difference between the 378 inadequacy and the 132,000, which is roughly $250,000 increased revenue.
Is there room on the current bus routes to absorb
We
these
believe
extra
so.
100 students? Yeah, okay.
Tom, you have a question?
Well, just a question, advice, whatever you want to call it, but it's just like clarity is everything with this. And when you say if this passes, then the $70,000 will be decreased in the transportation line, you leave it at that, people will understand it. When you say, and we're going to put it here, when we're going to put it there, then you confuse the issue, and next thing you know, I don't know what's going on. So I think that keeping the whole thing as simple and straightforward as possible will be a benefit to the presentation.
Great.
Thank you, Natasha.
You're welcome.
Are you ready for John Stark?
We are.
Okay.
You want the overview?
Overview, yes. So, due to some of that restructuring we talked about, and again, our priority really being the contracts, we are operating under a current budget of $14,500,728, and the default we're bringing to you is $14,304,978. The proposed budget is about $11,000 more than that, but both represent a decrease from our current budget of 1.35 and 1.27 respectively. So a little bit easier of a budget to put forth. We worked really hard to think about how do we make sure we're meeting student needs in a way that, we tried to think creatively about that. We did, I got some flack over it. We did restructure how we met the needs of some students who need alternative programming, and brought them back to campus. That was not a cost-saving measure. We didn't do that with the intention of being able to bring a budget to you that was lower. We did it because we thought it better met the needs of the students. However, there's a savings to it. There's a savings in the rental that we paid because it was an off-site building. It was a savings of a director that we had, and some staffing. Although those kids moved to the main campus, and we also looked at and trying to leverage that COVID grant. We looked at our summer programming. And we do competency recovery, summer school programming. We actually didn't spend what we had budgeted for a whole bunch of reasons in last year, and so we made a significant cut to that line. If we still want to meet those needs, we're thinking about different ways of doing that, and we think we can use COVID funding for that. So we made additional cuts within the salary line for that. So in total, there's the equivalent of 3 positions that are eliminated and a $25,000 summer programming cut. We are also navigating the 17.9 GMR. That's the healthcare rate, and that's $170,000. So we encompass that cost too. You're not seeing that as an increase in the budget through the staffing cuts and other cuts. We had the same census changes within our contracted services that you saw in Ware are also in the Stark budget. But because of how the calculation goes and the calculation for district shares, which is the SAU budget, the SAU budget went up by about $77,000, and that gets divided up by the districts based on equalized value, so your property value, and the enrollment of students. And so even if the budget stayed the same, it could go up and down by district because of those other factors. And so it went up at Ware, it went down at Stark. Under property services, there's the rent I talked about for the alternative program. We had an increase in our transportation contract, but a decrease in out-of-district tuition. So some of our students we send out. Part of our restructuring of the alternative program was to better meet the needs of our students in district and to be able to bring. It's best when students can be in district, I think, and so we're trying to make that happen. It's best financially, but it's also better outcomes for the student. That's not always possible. And then the supply line, we are looking at a math program for 6 through 12. I mean, it's a 6 through 12. We went through a process and to pick the program. We are looking how we need to have some of that money within our budget, but we're also offsetting that using COVID funding because we can make the argument legitimately that it helps to address some learning loss and mitigate the impact of COVID and all of this craziness. But we also need to have some of it built into the budget for the same reason I talked about technology in the Ware budget. Mm-hmm. So that is a little bit simpler of the John Stark budget.
I don't know. Go ahead, James.
Just real quick, the math program, is that like an actual computer program, or are you talking about a whole?
A whole
like, curriculum?
resource curriculum,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yep, books and workbooks and,
Okay.
yep.
Online and work textbook.
Did you say 6 through 12?
Right, so it also is within the WARE budget, but the increase is less in the WARE budget than it is in the Stark budget. And we try to do that, we try to look at, when we make any changes in curriculum, we try to do it with a K-12 perspective.
Any other questions?
The other warrant, so the Stark warrant will be the budgets, the default calculation, the proposed budget, the sports staff contract, and the teacher's contract.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Like,
I'm sorry, I'm not doing a good job. I was looking down, sorry.
Do you anticipate any similar article in the warrant articles that appeared in the John Stark one last year on retaining for capital improvements?
I do not.
Okay. I had just a separate related question to the SAU, because I get asked, is this the right time for that?
Yeah, I don't know what your question is, but I would say just go ask it.
No, I
They're the
get
only
asked,
people on the agenda.
I send this up to Chris, because I get asked
Yes.
by outsiders as well. And we know that the SAU budget appears in the
Right.
and it's a one line, it's sort of a line item,
Yep.
and it's sort of a mystery, because the voters don't have a say in how that's, any control over that. And when I looked at the 2021 budget, the SAU is 1.435 million, and this year it's 1.668 in the proposed budget. And that's like 233,000 over the last 2 years. And what
Yep.
changed? I think you had a position change up there. One is, does that cost $233,000?
No, no.
Could you just kind of give us a summary of
Yeah.
of your budget process up there? For example, you have salaries. How are those, when we have salary increases in town, we get to vote up or down on contracts and that.
Mm-hmm.
How are those salaries managed at the SAU level? And the staffing level up there is what I think Chris has indicated. It hasn't been a major change over the last 10 years. It's been about or the same
Right.
number of people. So can you give us
Sure,
a
sure.
quick summary of how that's run?
And I mean, you've touched on a tension, I think, that we grapple with all the time
Yeah.
because, as you said, the voters don't have a direct, it's a representational, and we go through a budget process with a budget hearing and present it in October, vote on it and have a draft budget just like this, and then bring it back and have a, full vote. So we do go through the same process, but it's not on a ballot. And so I absolutely understand. And so we actually all the time grapple with this because there are some efficiencies. There are some savings that I think we could realize as an SAU if we were to bring positions into the SAU rather than having them in the district. We could do things a little easier. We could, facilities. If we brought the facilities manager and had one facilities manager and had some of the custodians, if we ran the whole custodial piece out of the SAU, I think that might be more efficient. And it would enable us to, dispatch people as we need them. Technology might be another thing we could do that way. However, we haven't brought that forward for exactly what you highlighted, because we've now taken some big budget items and put it into, taken it out of this process right here. So, like, I totally understand where you're coming from as far as the concern over it. We've dealt with the same GMR healthcare increases that the districts do, and so census changes, so healthcare has been a huge driver. We did have a new technology position that last year. And I think I walked everyone through, but it's not easy. I walked through how we cut another position and how it offset that in the different budgets. But that's not clean. Like I can go back and show you that it did that, but it's not as clear as we would like. So
Plus equalized valuation.
that how,
It shifts all the time.
Right.
So like, is that just the budget?
You speak so clearly, I think you came across the mic.
Yeah, sorry. So that's, that figure that you quoted is in which budget that you're looking at? Is that just in the Ware budget or the John Stark
No,
budget?
SAU proposed, 2023 SAU proposed budget by object summary.
All right, so you've got the
total
whole-
to be spread across.
Fair enough,
the
yeah.
various, that's not the Ware
Portion of it.
portion. It's spread across the 4 schools.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question, of course, is because the Ware portion, let's pretend for a second, just hypothetically, that the SAU budget didn't change from one year to another. Ware's portion or Henneker's portion or John Stark's portion, which then gets split again between Henneker and Ware,
right.
will change just simply because of equalized valuation in each of the 2 communities, which gets further confounded by the fact that Henneker just did their revaluation. I don't know what the story is in Ware here.
just did the same.
We just did, yeah.
we had-
So
yeah.
that changes these calculations, all the way around. I want to just add a couple of things to this that Jackie's saying, because I think she's been our superintendent for a few years. I've been on the Stark board for a number of years prior to that. This has been an ongoing situation, and it's what shocks me in doing this for as long as we've been doing this is there are people in both communities who have no idea that it's a separate board at the high school than in the 2 separate communities. And we lament regularly that we are a multi-district SAU. Jackie's team has to manage, right now anyway, 6 different negotiations. 6 different negotiations between sort of the 3 different districts that we're managing here. And she is so spot on with the fact that there are efficiencies that could be realized within our district. We're sort of at this point now where that is the thing that we need to explore. And I'm chairing a committee right now that I'll put out in this forum, and anybody who's here should be welcome to join us at some point and certainly look into the survey work that we'll be doing over the next 60, 90 days or so. But that's exactly what we want to explore is where are these efficiencies? How can we make our districts better? Even if they stay in this sort of shape and form that they're in now, how can we realize some efficiencies? Even if it means, and this is the thing, the challenge, potentially the third rail, even if it means taking items that would normally be enumerated in an individual district budget and then put them into the SAU budget simply because that's how we would achieve that savings across all of the communities. We would the trade-off, if you will, would be needing to clearly communicate that. This finance committee, for instance, might need to have a greater look at the SAU budget, which happens 2 months earlier in the cycle than where we are right now. But we're still early days in that work. Okay. I know it's a simple question, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah, fair enough. No.
Yeah, Zach, I would say that as you go through that, if you want to communicate that with me, I'll spread it across the team for anybody that wants to be part of it, even if it's for next year's season.
Yeah.
Because we were looking early to try and do a little bit more learning about the process.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I mean, I think right now we had our first committee meeting, last week, 2 weeks ago. We have another one coming up soon. But the primary work of that, smaller committee will be to engage as many members of our greater community as possible. It'll include, taxpayers in both towns, but also teachers, students, parents, everybody to sort of, help us understand where their feelings are. I've lived in Henneker and I've been a resident in Ware for a few years as well, for my entire life. So I've actually seen sort of the way that these 2 communities have worked with one another and against one another, frankly, in certain ways with the schools. It's remarkable how many different rumors sort of get started about like what's available in one community, what's not available in another community, and then you see the differentials that sort of apply themselves at the high school level. So we kind of got to be done with that. I think that this is like a moment where we can all kind of figure out how this is going to wind up working better for our 2 communities, because we are 2 communities that share the same high school. We can be better at this than we have been historically, and probably save some money in doing it, which is kind of the win-win situation and everything,
Thank you.
Thank you.
There were one or two other people when I was writing a note that was competing with Bill for a question. Was that you, James? Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Just in general, we have a lot of funds that are coming in that we ascribe to COVID funds. That's going to stop at some point, and if that stops next year, what's that going to look like for the budget process?
So the grant funding stops in 2024. So we're trying to manage and budget that funding for next, the 22-23 and the 23-24. Understanding that it sunsets, it goes away unless we don't anticipate more money coming. We have to be done spending it by September 2024. So we know it's a constrained time period, and we're trying to manage it in a way we're not allowed to. Everything we put forward has to get approved because it's a federal grant, and so we put a proposal out there. It goes through the DOE. And so we can't supplant or take something that's already in the budget and say we're just going to use COVID funds. We have to make the argument that it's addressing learning loss. That's the number one priority. Somehow, we paid for cleaning supplies. We've done some, oh goodness, what else have we used? Air quality, right, we did some air quality work. We tutoring, but there's still a big chunk of money. We bought a lot of technology, right? Because we immediately needed to get Chromebooks in the hands of kids and some of our teachers needed to have an upgrade in order to do what they needed to do. And so we immediately did that. But then when we were able to breathe, we said, okay, we want to manage this through the budget cycle. And so the budget workshop we had with both the Ware and the Stark board was, here's our budget. We think we can shift this, 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 and this from our proposed, it's not already in our budget, but from what we think we need into the COVID grants. And so by the time we're going through the public hearing and the probably more deliberative session, we're going to have a much clearer plan if we decide to hire an interventionist. That's $75,000 that we're going to put in the grant for 2 years. We know it then goes away after that. But it's a position that is targeted, it's got a specific reason, it's back to it's not the fourth grade teacher, who will need after that. Our hope is we don't need that interventionist after those 2 years.
So a lot of what we're seeing in the budget for last year and going forward is going to be sort of anticipating those additional revenues or that additional money disappearing, those grants.
We're going to try to buy one-time things, whether it's human resources or physical resources that don't, technology accepting, that don't need to then get added to the budget after. That is we want to keep things flat.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
And that COVID, you had like four dumps of that, and the only unobligated amount is this 700-some thousand that you're now moving forward in the next 2 years.
Yes.
To have decisions made on that.
For
It's
Ware.
about 700 and
Yep.
some thousand, I think, isn't it?
Because that's for the Ware one.
Where? I'm sorry,
Yep.
that's the
Yep.
Ware School, that doesn't include John Stark, right?
We have, so it's 792,000. I got it. And we have 50,000 in, so we got what was called the CARES money. That was the immediate, we bought masks, we bought a cleanser, hand sanitizer, we were in the thick of it. We bought all those things that we needed. Some of that was the ESSER 1 money. Continued to buy those sorts of things, did some work this summer, worked with students this summer, spent that money. That was, so altogether, the first lump of money was 184,000, the second was 91,000, and now we're working through ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And so in total, we've got about just short of 850,000 to manage over 2 years.
On top of the money that you've already spent, you have 852,000 to spend
Yes.
over the next 2 years?
Yes. Right, and for Stark, we have 700,000 between the two. And in Stark, we had a number of expenses with graduation. That was something we could use COVID funds for. And you know, we had a pretty traditional graduation, and for 2 years in a row. And so that was not budget money, that was federal budget money.
Any other questions? It was a great graduation. My daughter graduated. Thank you. Does that wrap what you were going to talk about today?
I think so, yes.
I'd like to just ask a couple questions around calendar stuff, and forgive me if it's posted, I just didn't get a chance to look. What I do want to understand is deliberatives for both schools, districts.
Public
If it's
hearing.
Yeah,
So, public hearing
Sorry,
is
yeah.
when I present the budget, that's the first blush. The first time it's like a public hearing of the budget. And that is that second week in January. Do you have the dates? John Stark is that Friday, I do know that, and I think, where is the Wednesday?
Where is the 12th?
12th, and
So
is
John
Stark
Stark
the
would be
14th?
Start is the 14th, yep.
And then they accept the budget and it's theirs, and deliberative session is February,
February's. I mean, because, yeah, the town's the 12th.
9th,
February 9th and
11th.
11th.
9th is which?
Where? Yes, John Stark gets the Friday night. It's a hot date night at the deliberative session.
We make it worth it, don't worry.
I'll see if my wife wants to come for the date.
Bring a friend.
She won't come. She's a teacher. Okay, so that just gives us time to work backwards. So I know that what I'm asking here is a lot, but do you have any idea or target of when you think the budgets will be, and budgets completed? Because I have to work backwards in scheduling our meetings, and
Yeah.
last year was the first year's chair, and that was no normal year.
So the John Stark budget is final, as
So Stark is final.
we aren't anticipating doing additional work on that.
Okay,
The difference with the Ware budget would be 75,000 to 150,000 out of the salary benefit line. And we're meeting Tuesday.
We're nearly ratified with contracts too.
Yes.
I think that's sort of the other.
The ratification will happen officially on January 4th for Stark, and we're hoping it happens on Tuesday for Ware. So
So if you're looking for a
January, the next week are the public hearings. I could come back after the public hearings.
yeah, I'm just, I have no specific reason for
Yep.
asking, because I know we'll discuss, again, last year was just not
Yeah.
normal, so I'm not really sure what our meeting's gonna look like, other than we're gonna be here on the 5th. I think it's the only thing we've decided so far.
I think, in the past, I've come mid-January after public hearing.
Yeah.
And those will be finalized budgets because the board will have,
Right, so,
That would make sense if to like meet on like the 19th.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask. So, then, I would like to try and make it the 19th if
19th,
possible.
all right.
But Naomi?
Yeah.
I don't know if you hear this, but is this room available on the 19th?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic.
7.
It's not always that easy. Okay, so then the question for the board, or the committee is, I think that's when we start to get real busy in what we're doing. Do we want to just say now and make it a 6:30? And is that gonna be a problem? Because I think we end up getting there anyway.
That's fine, that's fine,
fine.
fine with me. Yeah, I'm going on the
That's fine.
19th.
And so that would be an update.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so what it does is it gives our team the time, it gives us a whole week on our own to look through, or attend the public.
Yep.
Any feedback, questions, concerns,
He said the 19th of January.
Yes, the 19th
Yes,
of January.
we have
the
Finance
Wednesday.
Committee, and so we're talking about 6:30.
Was the 5th, did we do that one at 7?
The 5th, we were planning for the 7th. Naomi, and I'm sorry, we're getting off track because we're still talking schools. I don't have any other questions about the schools, so I'll go around just one last time. The SAU, no more questions.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
is very helpful to everybody. I really appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't have to leave, I just don't want to keep you at the podium. So we're talking about the 5th, and I have no, let's just talk about, because we're on the calendar right now. Naomi, originally, when we talked about this, we were talking about the town, and then we shifted it, because Jeff was smarter than I was that night. But I think we were talking about the police, the fire and park, and the library. I think we were talking about all of them coming in.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with what we've done in the past? And does that make sense for the 5th? I'm kind of going around the room.
Swapping worked well for us anyway, because we had some quarantines and COVID messes, so it worked well with us. The final budget is gonna be Monday night with the board.
This
That
next,
is Benji, this is 20th. Then after that, we should be pretty much done with our budgets. We still got a couple of warrant articles I'm waiting on, but we should be in really good shape the 5th.
so with the 5th,
I don't know that I'll have a final warrant done, I was hoping to do that, but. So January 5th, you could have all of us for the budget, because we'd be done. Now, our public hearing for the budget is January 17th. It's a Monday night.
but it doesn't sound like there's a benefit for us to wait until the public hearing to have them. We wouldn't do that.
We don't normally.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm,
Yeah. I mean, even the school, we've had them in before and discussed it, but where it's such a tight,
And our deliberative is the Saturday, the 12th. 2/12.
yeah, I got that.
2/12, 2. A lot of 2s in there.
Choo-choo.
choo-choo.
22.
That's at 9 a.m. at Ware Middle School.
So, I mean, I think we're good, with meetings, we're good for the 5th, I think we're good for the 19th for the school, and,
Yeah, because you still have, after the public hearing, the next move is deliberatives.
right, so that gives us,
You've got,
1, 2,
The deliberatives are off, I think, an extra week this year.
yeah, so 2.5 weeks in between, if I'm
That's right,
counting
2.5
correctly.
weeks in between.
Yeah, didn't we have to meet within like a day's notice last year? Yeah.
yeah.
One of them was pretty.
Yeah, it was inconvenient to say the least, so, we have plenty of time, okay.
So on the 5th.
Until we get to January. Sorry to burst your bubble.
You want the town in on the 5th for all the budgets?
Yeah,
If you're gonna do that, do you make that a 6:30 meeting too?
that's why I was asking.
Oh, we already did.
originally.
No, we
Oh.
made
Oh,
the, made the
that's right.
19th
So
We
6:30.
made the 19th 6:30, so,
So let's make the 5th 6:30 then.
Yeah.
agreed. I think it's already posted, Naomi, right? So I'll have to send a
I don't know
note to
that- I don't
Karen.
know, I have to look.
Do you want to do it, or do you want me to send a note to Karen?
Karen's gone till the 23rd now.
Oh,
She took a little Christmas break.
okay. Would you be, is that something you're able to?
You send it to me, yeah.
I'd update it, but they won't give me access. You don't want to give me access to the website.
No, just send it to me, I can do it.
Okay. All right, so we're good there on meetings. Okay. We don't have much else on the agenda tonight, but let me just take a quick peek. I did.
And you said the town deliberative was February
It's
2nd?
Saturday. No, it's a Saturday, 12th.
Well,
The 12th. I'm like, the 2nd. I'm like, I was so confused.
it's messy, but you're welcome to look at my calendar. I write.
And I was, because I was like, I thought I put this in here. I'm like, why are they doing it on a Wednesday at 9 a.m.? Like, I heard something wrong.
It's not
That's
happening.
right. 021222.
2122.
So, sorry.
Hold on.
Fine.
Now we've got him confused.
No, you don't. I was just waiting. I don't want to. Old business. I don't have anything on old business other than meeting minutes, which we're going to table because Leah's not here. It just makes sense. She did send the draft. If Naomi gets a chance to put the draft up before the next meeting, anybody that wants to take a look at it, that would be great. We'll leave it at that. As far as, I do want to go through subcommittees. Honestly, I don't know that we have much to talk about the schools, but we can if you want. But as far as the town goes, just a quick walkthrough in the towns. I didn't take a ton of pictures. Jeff was there, Gary was there, and even our moderator came down. We had a really good conversation with Benji about the equipment. They showed us their trucks. We asked them a lot of really good, I thought were good questions about how the trucks deteriorate and rust and the safety part of it and what the better trucks are. And it's very clear that they're getting every last breath out of the trucks that they have.
He's doing a nice job. Benji does a nice job. He really does.
The rust and the rot in the pictures, it was worse in person. I don't know what else to say about that. There's some stuff, and I don't want to make a big deal, but there's some stuff that I think ultimately becomes safety issues, and he doesn't let it get that far because he won't let it be a safety issue. But in any other town, they just keep running until they fall apart. I'm convinced of that. So he did, he talked about the trucks. He talked about how they reuse a lot of the equipment. They even have a truck where they're replacing a frame, which is like building a new truck because it's the most cost-effective. It's one of the more reliable old trucks. They take everything off and put it on this new frame because it made sense, which is a huge deal. It also means that their mechanic is fantastic and he's working his butt off, which is just a side note there. The plow equipment, he showed us some of the stuff that he, I think, is it reskinned? I don't know if that's the phrase he used, but reblade the plows. They do a lot of metal work. They have racks of metal and stuff. So they're not throwing stuff away when it rots out saying, I want new equipment.
No.
They're maintaining it, and I was pretty impressed. It's actually, they're doing a lot more than I even realized. Any questions on the trucks or the equipment? Because I want to talk about the other part of it. Gary, after you left, Benji, because we all talk a lot, frankly, Gary had to leave, but he did walk us over to the other buildings. And I just think I wanted to share with the group, Benji's forward thinking. He's thinking about 5 years out. He's talking about what's going to happen. What do they need in the other buildings? He showed us some things that's not on warrants this year, but a bathroom that's fallen apart. The floor is barely there. And he wants to improve what that facility looks like, the efficiency for the people.
The transfer station is what you're talking about.
I'm sorry, the transfer station. Thank you, Jeff. And you're welcome to, I don't want to do all the talking, you're welcome.
Go ahead.
The condition of it is, none of us would want to work there. I think that it just goes to the point that Benji's not asking for more than what he needs. As a matter of fact, he probably needs more than what he's asking for. And I was encouraging him to put together some plans, some longer-term plans, so much like the kindergarten. I said, look, I really think the reason why the people in this town, the majority, kind of balked at the kindergarten idea because there wasn't a good plan. And I just kind of explained that to him. I said, I think that you may want to look at it that way and, get some help and maybe work with some of the people, come up with a plan because we saw stuff that just absolutely needs to be replaced. It's not, he wants fancy, shiny things.
To redesign the transfer station in a more efficient manner so that the recycling is undercover, you're not outside. The guys that are working there aren't outside, they're inside. 90% of your transfer stations in the state are enclosed. We could do some improvements there. The building itself, the little office is disgraceful. It's just disgusting in there. That could certainly need to be upgraded.
Yeah, they don't want you to come in anymore to pay.
No, no.
Pay for
You don't want them to fall through.
Reach outside.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like it was built from the scraps that people leave.
It does kind of, yeah.
But you know what the reality is? That's a steel building. That building's in the foundation and the frame of that building is great. We talked about it. It's the stuff that's inside.
It's really minor. To fix that little office, it's minor money. It's not a lot of money, and it really needs to happen.
Yeah, so those guys, if they don't want to fall through the floor, they walk all the way across to the DPW building. But
I
that's,
think the major issue there is safety, the crisscross of the pedestrian traffic.
he talked about that.
People are forever pulling up to dump their trash and then walking back and forth across with their recycling. They send their kids across with the recycling.
Absolutely right.
I mean, that's the major issue. I think that's liability waiting to happen there.
I know it sounds like we're off topic, but I think it's all relative to Benji's intentions, I think. I don't know. I think it was a good thing to do. I think lastly, he was thrilled that we were there. I mean, he couldn't have been happier that people were there listening to him, and so was, why do I always forget his manager's name? Joe.
Joe.
God,
Joe.
yeah. Joe's a good guy, and he spent a lot of time with us as well, so we appreciate that. So that was it on, as far as the town and the DPW. Anything else on the town, Tom?
You're gonna hear it all, next, on the 5th.
Yeah, I
so
just didn't know if there's
really,
anything, bullets
They
or
did
anything.
the small budgets on Monday night, the offices within this building at Parks and Rec, and, but, why go through it here when we're gonna hear it firsthand
Sure.
in a couple of weeks?
No problem.
I think we're up $6,000.
I'm sorry, what?
I think we're up $6,000 on the line.
It's pennies in the.
There was no big ticket items that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking. Is there anything, outliers? Okay.
No, there was.
Yeah, so we can wait on that. Anybody else got anything else? As far as, where our star? I think we had a great
Just very well.
conversation.
You got it tonight?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
I actually wrote down some of it, but I have to say it.
All right, so we'll switch to new business. Typically do calendar updates, which we did already. So we've got that covered. Next meeting is covered. So the last thing is really a call for any new business, if there's anything anybody needs to talk about.
The only thing I wanted to bring up under old business, but with Leah not here, was just my name was spelled incorrectly on the minutes for October 27th and also November 17th. So I wasn't sure how to address that.
You need to change your name.
Elizabeth was pretty common. I mean, you can't go wrong with Elizabeth.
I would just email Leah and just say, you just have my name wrong.
It's
Okay.
perfectly
Because it was
acceptable.
actually, the funny thing is that it was spelled based on multiple iterations across the minute, so it was like.
Oh, each time
Elizabeth
she
with
spelled
an
it different?
S, and then a Z, and then Salis, and
Is,
with an
is,
I.
is one of them right?
Liz.
You can't mess up LIZ, can you?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, just a suggestion on that. Other years, we've put out, just by email, a list of names of people, and here's their email.
Yeah.
We have it. We
Did it
distributed
go
it.
out this year?
Yeah, I can resend it to you though, Bill.
You did? I didn't get it.
Did I not
get
send
it.
it? No, excuse me.
Sent it.
Naomi sent it. So you sent it. Did you send it to everybody or just me?
Cell phone numbers for everybody, or phone numbers for everybody?
We did emails last year.
Yeah, I got it.
Names and emails.
You got it from one of us, right?
Yeah.
I'm happy to resend it.
Yeah.
Now I thought I did
I'll
something
take
wrong.
it. I'll take it. If you got it. It might have gone into my spam.
Oh, I wonder if
spam
Naomi's
mail.
been
I
using my
saw
old
it.
email address.
Probably.
Well, she did get it updated on the new list though,
I did.
because she wrote it down.
But then you emailed me on the old email address too, and I happened to look at it and I was like, Tom.
So which one, is it GSI or Gmail?
No, it's Gmail.
'Cause the
GSI,
Gmail.
I keep losing stuff. I don't get stuff.
Yeah, they have a
Especially
weird
bad when I don't get
weird
stuff from
spam
the
filter.
school.
I love them. They just have a weird spam filter.
Yeah,
You know what, I probably have your old one, it comes up first.
yeah, probably.
It does.
yeah.
I hate it. I'm gonna have to just delete
And
it.
and some of the stuff doesn't even go to spam. It's just like poof, gone. And I'm like, where did it go?
That I don't know.
You know what I'd like is, just a little reminder on the day of every meeting. I write them down, but sometimes I'm busy, and if I get an email that says, remember tonight's meeting, that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, you send out an email.
I send an agenda to Naomi
Okay, but
that's
by
a
reminder.
Monday.
That's a reminder for me anyway, that, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't say tonight, I'd say the day before,
or, yeah,
Yeah.
something.
because
Yeah.
Send it a few
tonight
days.
sometimes gets lost.
3-day notice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The one
so
for
it's-
today went out last week sometime, I mean.
yeah. So this, when Naomi posts it, doesn't it go out in the automated meeting?
It goes
So-
out to e-subscribe, whoever.
Yeah. So there's a subscription that I get. So like when the Board of Selectmen,
Sure.
I get an agenda
That's
every
what
time they
that's what
release
I
an
get.
agenda. So the same thing comes out. That's why they're getting them. But I have no problem sending an email. But if you're interested in the other meetings, it's actually kind of cool. I signed up a couple of years ago
Yeah,
because
no,
I always miss the agendas.
I like it,
You
I
can
like
always
it.
delete it.
Yeah.
Do the minutes, you know what I mean, if something, I always encourage people to go on and click as many as they want.
Sure.
And then if you're not available to read the minutes, when we put the minutes up, it tells you they're available, it says read more. You can or you don't have to.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can
Okay.
save it.
All right. Any other new business? All right. So we're gonna move to close the meeting.
Motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Have a good evening. So